Hey, it's me, JT, and welcome back to un autre video. The most embarrassing time in my life happened in Mexico. Cutscene shows a bunch of pretty stuff. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm joking, I'm sorry. But yeah, seriously, the most embarrassing occurrence of my life happened in Mexico. One of the most. One of the most embarrassing. I don't want to say most embarrassing, but it was pretty embarrassing. So ultimately, back in 2021, I wasn't working. I wasn't going to school because things were just, I was in a transition period. Of course, it was the middle of the pandemic, and everyone was more or less in some sort of transition period. And so ultimately for me, I took a year and I traveled. Now, that's a whole story in itself. But what's important for this video is that the last 3 months of my road trips and travels I spent in Mexico. Yes, I drove to Mexico and I drove all over the country. I explored so many different places. And that's actually where the little bit of Spanish I do comprehend, I got it from Mexico. And so, however, when I went to Mexico originally, I did not speak any Spanish. Yeah, I took like a year of Spanish in middle school, I think eighth grade, and I took a semester of Spanish in university, but that was it. And so I go down to Mexico, not speaking any Spanish. And I remember crossing the border was the most incredible feeling ever. And so I'm looking at the signs. They're more or less, if I remember correctly, there were English signs at the border. And just things like get to the passport office, things like that. Whatever way, I recognized passport or visa or whatever, and I knew I needed to go through their equivalent of customs. And so, follow the signs, I go to this place. No biggie. It's like, okay, this is pretty good. And I'm looking for the parking lot. And so I figured to myself, well, I don't know how to get to where I need to go with these parking lots. And so let me just go ask the security guard up here and see if he can help me out. So I drive up to this dude and I'm like, hey, which parking lot takes you to the where I can get my passport stamped? And he doesn't say anything to me. He's just looking at me. And I'm just kind of looking at him back like, I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm looking for the passport office. Can you help me? This dude started speaking to me in Spanish. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It caught me off guard. And you would think that I would have expected that, of course, but I don't know. I think up until that point, I always knew that people in Mexico spoke Spanish, but it just hits different, I guess is what I'm saying, when you go there and they actually all speak Spanish to you. That hits different, especially when you don't know Spanish. And so I quickly realized, oh, wow, this is going to be interesting. And ultimately, I ended up meeting an American who lives in Mexico, and he just comes back every 6 months to renew his visa. And this guy was married, had a family in Monterrey, and I happened to run it into him at the passport office in the parking lot when I finally did find the parking lot. And I remember him asking me, "Hey, you're American?" I was just like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you speak any Spanish?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, "All right, bro. I'll show you how to do everything. I'll take you through it." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you, God." That was literally the best thing ever. He helped me through the process. I got to where I was going, started getting acclimated, but really what I found was that it took me, I'd say, about a month and a half to 2 months before I actually got comfortable with talking to people. And so, in the times where I would try to talk to people, it was usually at a taco stand. And so I learned pretty well how to communicate when I'm ordering food. But I had to go do laundry one day. I remember I was in Mexico City and I decided I was going to go find a laundromat. And so I find this laundromat, go inside, and they did things a little differently there. Instead of putting coins in a machine or swiping your card at the machine, you had to go to the counter and tell them which machine you'd like to use, and you pay at the counter, and then they control the machines more or less from where they're at. So I pay, and she starts asking me, "Okay, ¿cuál es tu nombre?" In my head, when she asked me, "¿Cuál es tu nombre?" I heard nombre, and the first thing that popped into my head was number. And so I responded, cuatro, dos, cinco. And she's like, "No, ¿cuál es tu nombre?" I'm like, "Sí, sí, cuatro, dos, cinco." Mind you, there's people standing around at this point looking at me like, she's like, "No, no, ¿cuál es tu nombre? ¿Cuál es tu nombre?" I'm just like, these are the numbers, cuatro, dos, cinco. And this lady comes up. She's like, "What is your name?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, that was so embarrassing." And even now, thinking about it, I kind of cringe because I don't think I've ever felt so dumb than in that moment. And immediately I was like, I bet this is what it's like when Spanish speaking people come to the United States and they don't speak English and people are talking to them in English. And sometimes there are people who tend to stereotype a foreign accent as having lesser intelligence. Of course, if anything, it shows that that person speaks multiple languages, but let's face it, it's just one of those realities, right? And so it really changed my viewpoint on a lot of things. And I was like, wow, I feel dumb everywhere I go. But that was really one of those moments that made me come to this realization that, okay, yeah, I really need to be practicing more. I need to be more intentional about learning more of the language on YouTube while I'm here and actually take advantage of the opportunities to go out and risk being spoken to. Ultimately, I left from Mexico City. I ended up going to another place, and I was there for a whole month and a half just in that one place. Had an apartment, uh, had maid service, which was really nice. I got my dog from there, because there's stray dogs everywhere in Mexico, and so, yep, that's where I met mine. And yeah, I really started to have a life there, going to the grocery store, taking the dog to the vet, going out. I had made some friends. I would go hang out with this girl and her family. her cousins or sisters or whatever. And we would just go to all these different places in Mexico. We went to the pyramids. That was interesting. Definitely check it out if you ever go to Mexico, which I do recommend visiting Mexico and safely. And so yeah, we traveled a lot. We definitely got to see a lot of different things, and that really got me out into the world where I got exposure to the language for sure. Pero ahora creo que mis español no es muy buena, pero me encanta las oportunidades para practicar con los otros gentes. Yeah, as you can see, my Spanish is not perfect. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it is, but it's something that I've been more or less working on along with the other languages I studied. But I would say the takeaway from this is if you encounter people who speak another language or they have an accent when they speak English, don't assume they're dumb, because chances are if you're watching my channel, you have some sort of interest in language and or travel or something of the nature. And so it's very likely that you may find yourself also in that type of situation. And it's not fun. And it's such a relief whenever there are people who are patient. However, if you are learning a language, though, don't be afraid to speak it. Definitely take advantage of opportunities. If you go to another country where that language is spoken, get out there and do it. Just get out there and do it. It builds character. Now you guys have it. That was one of the most embarrassing experiences I've had with learning a language. I hope you enjoyed it. Have you guys had similar experiences? If so, leave them in the comments. And on that one, I'll catch you next time. Peace out.